Welcome to the Silver Divorce Podcast, where we offer advice, stories, and support for people age 50 plus who are considering or who are facing divorce. I'm Lisa.
And I'm Pat.
So, Pat, what are we going to talk about this episode?
Well, hello out there, and thank you for joining us. Today, we are going to discuss on how to hire a good attorney as well as the best way to work with your attorney. Our goal is to provide you with information that gives you direction you need and possibly will save you hundreds of dollars. And please know, we are not attorneys or counselors. We are only two people who have been through divorce process and have done a great deal of research to help our listeners. And I have almost 20 years of experience as a facilitator of divorce care. And while we are sharing these true stories, names have been changed to protect the innocent.
That's right. It's like the old show Dragnet.
Yeah, that's right.
While the
that's
stories
right.
are true, we're changing the names to protect the innocent. So, Pat, a lot of people think this is, we're amicable. We both agree we want a divorce. Can I do this myself? Why do I need an attorney?
Yeah, many questions. Well, one question is, why do you need an attorney? Well, how much do you trust the other spouse? Unfortunately, it's not always possible to keep a divorce amicable, so ask yourself these questions. Do you think your spouse is holding back information on assets, being a bully, being dishonest, abusive? If so, a lawyer can help protect you and your children. Also, if your spouse has hired an especially aggressive attorney, you will need somebody representing you who can fight back. Now, if you and your spouse can agree on the big issues, you may possibly just hire one attorney to draw up the paperwork to save time and costs. As long as you are confident, you both can work out the minor details and problems. But you need to understand that this one attorney cannot represent you both if there are issues you cannot agree on. He or she is just there to draw up the paperwork. And know that attorneys are trained in techniques of what's called a collaborative divorce. What that means is one attorney is representing each spouse, and everyone agrees they will share information and work cooperatively towards settling instead of going to court. This removes the lawyer's incentive to handle litigation, to go to court and encourage a settlement.
Yeah, under an uncontested divorce, there is what's called an agreed divorce, and that's where you have no minor children or no disabled children, no one's pregnant. You have no mutually owned real estate or businesses, no retirement benefits. You agree on alimony and property division. You can complete the paperwork and go to a hearing, but under irreconcilable differences as an uncontested, you do have to do a marital dissolution agreement, and that can get tricky, and you do want somebody who's going to make sure that you are represented. So, Pat, that you can, as I mentioned, download it from the internet and do it yourself. What are some of the dangers in doing that?
Well, let's see, Lisa.
I know in all of your years of experience in witnessing divorce issues, have you ever come across people who have filed on their own and drawn up their own papers?
Yes, in all my experience in divorce care and witnessing everyone's issues, I know of only one couple who did not hire an attorney. They agreed beforehand on splitting all assets. Both were agreeable on the divorce. They drew up their own papers off the internet and filed. Also know this is dangerous to do a do-it-yourself divorce. Of course, everyone wants to avoid costs, but it can certainly have negative consequences. There are 5 common dangers in doing so. Making uninformed decisions without proper legal advice and understanding the laws, it could cause more stress and costs. Number 2, inability to enforce court orders. An individual may not have access to the same enforcement mechanisms as those with legal representation. This could be a challenge without assistance of legal counsel. Also, number 3, problems establishing residency. There are residency requirements in some states. In Tennessee, at least one spouse must have lived in the state for at least 6 months. A do-it-yourself divorce may result in this being overlooked. Also, number 4, missing important paperwork. Divorce paperwork is very complex. Missing important documents can lead in delays and dismissal of divorce proceedings and can be very cumbersome. I know, Lisa, in your case, didn't you have to, you had to submit 300 documents?
Right. In my discovery, I submitted over 300 documents. But, when I think about DIY divorce, I think about, do you DIY electrical needs at your house? No, because you don't want to get a risk of being electrocuted, right?
Right.
Similar to that, there are lots of people.
Good example.
There are a lot of people who afterwards, they wish they had a different way of going about it. They felt like they missed out on something. But there is one very concrete example that can really hurt you, and that's if you have a 401k, a 403b, or an IRA, and you want to split that, well, you have to submit a qualified domestic relations order, or a QDRO, that tells the retirement account how to split that money between the parties. Now, that language is very specific, and if it is not done correctly, the QDRO administrator will send it back without approving it, and that can cause significant delays in distributing the money. And, delays in doing that paperwork can hurt you if the market is in a capitulation state.
Oh, yeah.
I can, give you an example of a couple that I'm aware of. I'll call them Jack and Mary, changing the names. They had reached an agreement, but Mary didn't want to sign it that day. She wanted 24 hours to think about it.
Right.
Well, then Mary started to think about, I would like to have, this desk from the house, and I would like to have, and she started going back and forth with additional property that she wanted. And it was a 6-week delay of finalizing that.
Oh, my gosh.
So the QDRO could be sent to the administrator. Well, in that time frame, when QDROs are written, they often have a clause that says if there are gains in the market during the time frame, you'll benefit from the gains. The person who's getting the money will benefit from the gains. If there are losses in the market, the person that is supposed to get the money will get the losses. Well, in that particular case, Mary took 6 weeks to fight over maybe $2,000 worth of property. The market capitulated, and she suffered a $10,000 loss in what she was supposed to get from the QDRO. So, the QDRO is very specific. It needs to be done correctly, or it'll get sent back. It needs to be in a timely way, or you could suffer losses from market capitulation.
And see, this is a fine example of trying to do it yourself. Just all the work, the paperwork you have to read through, everything that needs to be done can be so stressful and cumbersome. So I personally don't recommend it.
Right. Yeah. And then also, you won't have legal counsel during court hearings. So with both in uncontested divorces, an agreed, uncontested, and irreconcilable difference, there's a court hearing before they finalize that divorce.
Right. And also, one of the most important things to remember is the lack of effective advocacy. Without legal counsel, like I've mentioned, during court hearings, a divorce can be
It's It's okay.
I can't. I have an allergy right now, so forgive me. Have devastating consequences that will cost you money, and I'm telling you, it's a considerable risk. So just be careful out there.
And so many times the trauma of divorce makes you think, I just want this over. I just want this over.
That's the worst thing you can think of.
You're willing to agree to whatever. But
that's awful.
A year down the road, when you're trying to live on the finances, you will wish that you had effective counsel. And I think we said this in a previous episode, but the statistics are that in a divorce, women on average lose 43% of their income.
That's right.
And men lose 21%. So you have to think about, if you don't get a fair settlement, are you going to have to go back to work? How are you going to make up that gap in money?
That's right.
It is, again, are you going to argue over $2,000 to lose 10, or to lose out on 10? So
that's right, Lisa. It's just not a time to try to rush through the process, because like we keep reiterating, this is about you and your future. You're going to have to be super careful. So, and Lisa, how does one hire a good attorney?
Oh, that is a common question. I see that probably 15 times a day. People are saying, my husband's filed or my wife is filed. How do I find a good attorney?
Right.
Well, as Pat has talked about, it's an important advocate. If your spouse says he or she's filing for divorce and making demands and telling you how it's going to be, what do you do? Well, no matter whether your divorce is amicable or contentious, you've got to have somebody who's watching out for you. And then also, there are a lot of nuances to the division of property, especially if a house or a business is involved. As I mentioned, you'll want a valuation on all of your property, because that valuation gets equalized between the parties.
That's right.
You have to think about not only current earnings, but future earnings. Are you married to a professional whose future earnings are likely to increase? You think about alimony, child support, future Social Security payments. You simply can't do that alone.
No.
And then also, if your spouse was the first to file, that attorney will communicate directly with you until you have your own attorney. And that is very stressful, to be at home and to be constantly getting served with some sort of papers.
That's right.
Once you are represented, they can only communicate to your attorney. So the sooner you're represented, the better. And then let's call out one important factor. The person that files first is called the plaintiff, and it's very common for that person to ask for all the property, all the money, all the possessions, to make you pay all the attorney's fees.
The stars and the moon.
Yeah, and to make you pay all the debt. Well, if you don't have a good legal counsel, you're going to go into a tailspin, and you don't know what's normal. Just know that is common, it's bullying, and that is not going to happen. Your spouse will not get it all and leave you with all the debt unless you agree to this. So you have to think, would a judge allow this to happen? Not without your approval and agreement. So take a deep breath, calm down, and let's talk about finding a good attorney.
Yeah, well, on hiring a good attorney, that's some good information, Lisa. But
So how do you actually go about finding that good attorney?
Yeah.
Well, I look at it as a good match is a lot like marriage. You've got to date a few to find out who's compatible.
That's a good example. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, you have to have somebody who's compatible with your personality. And you have to feel comfortable with them. So how do you do that? How do you date attorneys? Well, we mean you schedule appointments for consultations with at least 3 in your area. In general, consultations are free. There are some busy attorneys now who charge a fee for the consultation, but if you hire them afterwards, the consultation fee is actually put towards your retainer.
Well, Lisa, how does one look for getting a good attorney?
Well, you want somebody who's established in the community.
Oh, absolutely.
And I say that because an attorney who's been established, who's going to court all the time, who knows all the judges, they will know, based on the experience they've had with the judges and the mediators, how your case is likely to play out. They'll also not waste your money on frivolous filings. An attorney who is not out, chasing new cases, who really is established in their business and comfortable, they're going to not file a subpoena when an email or phone call to the opposing attorney will get the job done. And let me just give you an example on mediation. In contested cases, mediation is required. So an experienced attorney who's, is not as concerned about driving up the billings will send an email to the opposing attorney and will say, hey, we know mediation is required. Do you want to go ahead and get that scheduled? But an attorney who is concerned with driving up the billings, they will file a court order. So they have to go to court, stand in front of the judge, have the judge say, I'm ordering mediation, and it just adds to those billings. So you want somebody who's going to take the approach of, I've got a lot of business, and I'm going to be as efficient as possible with your money. And then also, a good experienced attorney is going to give you straight answers based on experience and not tell you what you want to hear. And there are some examples of that too, when you're going in and, for example, I was thinking myself, I did not know what was going on. Should I hire a private investigator?
Yeah, right.
And my attorney just said, you know what, in this case, it wouldn't matter in the division of property anyway, and all you would do is torture yourself. Why would you need to hire
and it's more expense.
Yeah, just don't spend the money. It's not going to make a difference in the division of the property. You don't need to be doing that.
Right, right.
So you want somebody who's going to sensibly tell you, based on their experience, what's going to happen. And then you want someone who's going to listen to your concern and point you in the direction of resources to help you. So we know that in Tennessee, mediation is mandatory in contested cases, with a few exceptions, such as the exception for domestic violence, which means that you will go to mediation before you proceed to trial. So you want someone who's a skilled negotiator and someone with a reputation of being able to settle divorce cases without going to trial.
Absolutely.
Yeah, trials are very expensive, and only a small percentage of cases go to trial. And they tend to be, complex cases where maybe there's a business involved, or people simply can't agree on, division of assets or custody of the children.
Right.
But you want somebody who's very skilled at negotiator and has a reputation for settling cases without the need to go to trial.
Exactly. And Lisa, that's good information on what would one look for in getting an attorney. But how do you find a good attorney?
Yeah, just like many other things, if you need a repair done at your house, what do? You typically ask your friends and family.
Yep.
Word of mouth. And I will tell you that, maybe initially when you're served, you don't want to talk about it. Or you have served your husband, maybe you're embarrassed. You don't want people to know you're going through a divorce after 30 years of marriage.
And that's so common.
And so what I recommend is that, first of all, just develop what you're going to say. And you don't have to go into your story. Maybe it is, you say, unfortunately, we're getting divorced and I'm emotionally not ready to talk about it right now. But
just the basics.
But I could use your advice.
Right.
If you could help me, do you know of a divorce attorney that's good?
Mm-hmm.
Who would you recommend?
Mm-hmm.
And help get pointed in the right direction.
Right, right.
Also, check out the best of the best listings in your area.
That's a good idea, Lisa.
Yeah, these are lists voted on by residents, and you can find them. That I know that the local newspapers here and the local TV station, they both have best of the best lists.
Okay.
and you can get a good idea of, 3 people that you might want to interview based on those who's been
Right,
voted best of the
right.
best in your area. Then also read Yelp and Google reviews. If you simply do a Google search for attorneys, you'll find all those sponsored. Those come up first. Those are ads. Those are people that have advertised to come up first. That's why you'll want to have a very good basis of strong word of mouth and best of the best listings. Read their reviews, their
Oh,
Google
yeah,
and Yelp
for
reviews
sure.
before you make it. And then schedule your appointments. Go in to at least 3 and have a consultation and make sure, just like, those dating sites, is it
Yeah.
is it a good fit?
Yeah. And just have your questions down pat. Just be prepared.
Right. And, there is a lot of confusion we find about the role an attorney plays. If you've never been divorced before,
Yeah.
you don't know. You have no idea what a role an attorney is supposed to play.
Right.
So maybe, Pat, can you speak to that?
Well, what your attorney is not a CPA. He's not your friend or your counselor or your therapist. They are only there to protect you and your rights, represent you and your case. Every time you email, call, or contact them, the costs go up. So you need to be very intentional about what you need to talk to with them and about what you send them, because every time an email goes out or a phone call, it's just added to their costs. Lisa, what is the best way?
The best way to keep those costs down?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you said it best. Time is money. Time is money when you work with your attorney. They are going to, as we mentioned before, ask for a retainer. It can be anywhere from $5,000 to $7,500, but ask for their hourly rate. Most of them are anywhere from $350 to $450 an hour for the attorney, and then there's a lesser amount for the paralegal. And the paralegal is, really a hero in my eyes of the law office, because
Yeah, they are.
they're the ones who prepare all of the documents and will spend the most time on the nuts and bolts of your case. But just know, anytime anyone in the office talks to you, opens an email from you, has a meeting with you, prepares paperwork for
Yes.
you, talks to the opposing attorney for you, they will make a note of how much time they spent and
Yes.
charge it against your retainer.
Yeah, they do.
Attorneys bill in quarter-hour or 15-minute increments. So the last thing you want is to come to the end of your divorce and get a big bill from your attorney because of how you were working with them. So here's some tips in that. Make sure your attorney is aware of your goals. First of all, I recommend that you have a best case scenario statement ready for that first meeting. Do you want to stay in the house? Do you want to retain some ownership of the business? Do you want alimony? Do you want child support? Lay out the best case scenario for your attorney so they know where you're coming from. And then once you have that first meeting, communicate via email, not in person or via phone calls. And I say that because you might think you're just popping into the office for an update, or you're calling for an update, but they are writing down and charging you for that time.
I know, every little minute.
And, after, how it is, Pat, you get on the phone with somebody and one conversation leads to another, and you start going down a whole lot of rabbit holes.
That's right.
And suddenly you've racked up a big bill for that phone call. And attorneys are experts in family law, and they deserve to be paid their value.
Right.
It's up to us not to waste their time. And so I'm going to say that when you email them, communicate succinctly. Do not send a long, rambling train of thought email that makes that attorney sift through and try to decide what is that person's question.
And it's eating up time.
Yeah, so what you'll want to do is determine what your questions are. I used to bullet point my questions. I would say, hello, Jane, I have 3 questions for you. Number 1, lay out the question very succinctly.
Right.
Number 2, number 3. And what you'll find is your attorney's going to respond in exactly that fashion. So the last thing I would say is know that nothing happens quickly in the divorce system. Do not inundate your attorney with emails. In Tennessee, due to mandatory mediation for contested cases, it can take anywhere from 9 months or more for a divorce. It is a slow process. So for you to constantly call your attorney and say, any updates, that's just costing you money that you don't need to be spending.
Yeah, good advice. But Lisa, what paperwork should one prepare to make it go smoothly with their attorney?
Yeah, you can really help your attorney on this. You know, as we have said, your attorney is a specialist in family law. And first, let's just step back and think about discovery. You know, in my discovery, I submitted 304 documents.
Wow.
So did I really think that my attorney had time to sift through all those documents to find relevant information? No, they don't. So do your own homework on your marital financial situation. The time that you spend doing this will save you attorney's fees. And then also, it'll help your attorney fight for you because they don't have to try and understand your financial situation by sorting through hordes of documentation. You will have done that for them. So, as Pat has mentioned, your attorney's not your financial advisor.
Nope.
So start an Excel spreadsheet, or a Google Sheets spreadsheet. And Pat, what we're going to do is post an example on our Facebook page.
Great.
And we'll put it under the files section of our Facebook pages so it gives you a good idea of what to do.
We hope this will help you all.
Yeah. So let me just spell out some of the things that your spreadsheet should have. On your first tab, do your monthly income, your monthly income for your husband, yourself, both active, and don't forget those passive incomes that you might have. Monthly expenses. This is important to go through your credit card statement and your checkbook and look for those expenses that you may not think about. It could be, of course, we know mortgage, utilities, car payments, credit card, insurance, food, gas.
Yeah, and there's Netflix and all those other small items.
And there, the newspaper. Do you get the newspaper? And there are some bills that you don't get except for every 6 months. Think about, you'll go through your statements to capture those. And, even fees as small as your iCloud storage account, include that in your expenses. Then you'll list your liabilities, and that's where you want to capture your savings account, your checking, the 401k balances for each of you, your IRAs, your certificates of deposit, your stocks, your cash. Then your liabilities, your mortgages, your student loans, car loans, credit cards, and whose name those are in. And finally, vehicles. You'll want to list your car, truck, boat, RV, riding tractor, mower, ATV, essentially anything that has a motor has a value, and list that under your vehicle and put a value on it. And then you can really visit Kelley Blue Book for a lot of those private party values. And if you can't find it on Kelley Blue Book, you can search sold listings on Facebook Marketplace, eBay. Use Google Lens and do a Google Lens search. So then finally, you're going to inventory all of your possessions. I know this is overwhelming. When you read that, you think, what? I've got to inventory everything? Think of it this way. It will be to your benefit to have the value of every item you own when it comes to trading that value for other things that you might want, such as equity in your home. So we're going to post an example of this on our Facebook page as well. It will be under the files section of our Facebook page. So how do you do that? What's the best way to tackle this? Go room by room, walk into your living room, look around, couch, lamp, piece of artwork, desk, TV, and put a value on it. And you'll want to say, who owns the item? Is it joint? Is it yours? Is it his? Was it a gift? Or is it a family heirloom? And then put a value. And as I mentioned, you can easily find those values with a little bit of homework. And what will happen is you'll have a total for all of your possessions as a couple. And I just want to say this as an aside. When you're in mediation, your spouse's attorney will say that you valued his higher than you valued yours. And as long as you have your sources, it doesn't matter what that opposing attorney says. You have, if you have valued them fairly and you have your sources for the values will stand up. So, and then also, if you have a business together, you'll need to talk to your attorney about a business valuation. So it sounds like a lot of work, and truthfully, it is a lot of work. It is almost a full-time job for several days to complete this.
Well, it is, but it's impacting your future.
It is, and it'll make your attorney's job much easier. Your attorney can fight for you much easier if they know exactly what you have.
Yeah, good information.
Right.
Well, Lisa, here's a big question. Who pays for the divorce? Who pays the attorney?
Well, generally, as typically in that filing, it'll ask for the attorney's fees to be paid by the defendant. But what generally happens in cases where the income is relatively equal, each spouse will pay their attorney's fees. But when there's a big disparity in income, one spouse might earn 5 or 10 times what the other is earning, or it might be a stay-at-home mom, then the higher earning spouse will generally pay both attorney's fees. So I know we have shared a lot of detailed information, and our goal, though, is to help you to avoid the pitfalls that we might have fallen in our process.
I know. It's just so important to know where you're coming from and to do your homework.
So, Pat, in the next episode, what are we going to talk about?
Well, in the next episode, we are going to talk about standing in your power and boundaries. And I know this is the emotional side of divorce, and it's difficult to manage, but it's most important to keep it under control, your emotions.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Pat. I look forward to that episode. We also are looking forward to having some guests to help us with that. The emotional side is just as important, actually, if not more important than the technical side, because oftentimes you make mistakes driven on your emotions.
That's right. I was going to mention that as well. You're just going to let your emotions guide you, and you cannot do that. You have to look at it like a business transaction.
That's right.
Again, it affects your future.
That's right. So we welcome your questions. Like we said, we're not attorneys and we're not counselors, but what we know is how to find answers. So please email us at silverdivorcepodcast@gmail.com or join our Facebook page at Silver Divorce Podcast.
Until next time, remember, divorce is one event in a lifetime of events, and it does not define who you are. And join us next time on Silver Divorce Podcast. I'm Pat.
And I'm Lisa.
Bye for now.
Bye.